All right, I want to talk about the 7 ways to assault. So previously there was 6 ways which will be familiar to you all as an understanding of the way in which you can be assaulted in a potentially violent to a violent sense, right? So the first was intimidation. So intimidation is non-physical, and it could be by an individual or group of individuals dressed in a certain way. It could be the way somebody looks at you. So somebody can make, I've seen somebody turn ashen white and completely capitulate 50 yards across a nightclub dance floor because somebody has come in who represents a problem to them. Very intimidating way. Just give him a hard stare. So completely intimidated and capitulated by that. What that usually advances to, again, still non-physical at this point, is verbal threatening. I'll fucking knock you out. Maybe it's a knife-based threat. I'll open you up like a fucking sardine can. So intimidation and verbal threatening. Non-physical, but nonetheless, these are entries to assault. The next are physical. That begins with getting hit. So first of all, if you look at real fight situations, if you want to call them that, on YouTube, that are initially unarmed and untrained, let's say, right? Well, what do people do? People hit people. They ball up their fist and they punch you, right? They punch you. They strike you in some way. Sometimes they'll kick you, but you'll be hit. And another is you'll be grabbed and manhandled. So grabbed and pulled around. Now the two, being punched or struck and hit, as well as grabbed, being punched or struck, as well as getting grabbed and manhandled, are integrated. So a lot of traditional martial arts and self-defense methods based around that will depict you getting punched in a certain way separately to getting grabbed in a certain way. They're a hybrid. They're integrated. People grab you and punch you then grab you, or grab you and hold you while someone else punches you. So basically, struck or punched and grabbed or manhandled in some way would now be 4 of the 7 ways to assault, right? From there, the old staple of weapons. Of course, weapons have always been around, so nefariously and otherwise, they are used by both sides. We are indeed tool-bearing animals. Nobody walks into war unarmed. And physical violence is the microcosm of war. So, of course, weapons will be involved. And weapons will give the criminal the higher probability of success if you are unarmed as a Commonwealth citizen. So weapon or weapons, plural, will be present. Next is multiple assailants. This would be where the 6 would end from previous times. There's 2 or 3 against 1. So to recap that, first 2 are non-physical, intimidation, verbal threatening, then getting punched, kicked or struck in some way, getting grabbed and manhandled, those 2 being integrated, the introduction of a weapon or weapons, and multiple assailants. And now, the new vogue that we are seeing come in to much more commonality in the last 10 years is now multiple armed assailants. So, the new addition to the threat in the West of multiple armed assailants is forced anyone who is interested in self-preservation as a self-protection trainee to up their game. So now there is a need for you to understand how weapons work, for you to understand the unfair legislation in this country of the UK and any other Commonwealth country which doesn't apply to the criminal but will absolutely persecute and prosecute you if you arm yourself against potential armed enemies. Well, I'm not telling you to do that, but you are going to have to understand how weapons work at least. So you could use an improvised tool of opportunity that's not a purpose-built weapon by design. You could use a makeshift tool of opportunity in a life-saving jam. If, out of an act of sheer desperation, if you're going to die, if you couldn't, you need to know how it works. And if you were to disarm a subject from a weapon, a bladed weapon or an impact weapon, and now more are coming armed, it would be very, very useful if you knew how to use it. So I don't know of an unarmed skill set that will allow you reliably to deal with multiple armed assailants, particularly determined and with some training, unless you two have a weapon, unless you two have a force multiplier. So there has been a need in the last 10 years for us to massively up our game in terms of your combative understanding and combative skills. You need good unarmed skills, and you need to understand how weapons work. You need to know how to use a point and edge tool. You need to know how to use blunt force trauma weapons. Where legality allows and opportunity arises, you need to learn how to shoot and handle firearms, and you need to know how to use the environment and anything within that environment to your advantage. So again, just to recap: intimidation, verbal threatening, being struck, punched, or kicked in some way, so being hit, being manhandled or grabbed, those two being integrated, and weapons, multiple assailants, and multiple armed assailants. So understand what the threat is. Everything is still current. There's still a huge amount of domestic violence. There's still a huge amount of domestic and sexual abuse going on within families. There's still a huge amount of, gratuitous violence for violence sake on a Friday, Saturday night in a nightclub. There's still all sorts of shit that's always been going on, with the addition of now multiple armed assailants. Multiple armed assailants. You've got Somalian gangs having situations with each other outside of Primark with machetes. So, how easy would that be to be turned upon you, or to end up in the wrong place at the wrong time and end up involved in that? So understand the current threat to real threat to life, and understand the need for taking your skills to a tier 1 civilian level.